Stanton and the Miami Marlins travel to New York to face the Mets.
Left right field towards the corner.
The pregame's at 3:30 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 4:30. Saturday on ESPN Radio. SVP and Russillo, the podcast.
Hey, it's SVP and Russillo. Appreciate you checking out the podcast. With so much going on this week and weekend, what's the event you're most excited for? On the topic of the NFL draft, a ton of discussion. The draft rumor you do or do not believe. My thoughts on Shane Ray, a guy I'm rooting for, even as he made a gigantic mistake the week of the draft. 5 questions that I didn't know in advance. Might have helped if I did to answer one of them a little bit more promptly. Who's on the NBA's all-complaint team, and do you think the Hawks and Bulls are now at all in trouble? That and a visit late in the program with Draymon Green from Golden State. What's the dumbest thing he's seen Steph Curry do all year? Podcast starts now.
SVP and Russillo.
We're asking you to share with us, and we'll share with you our thoughts on this question. With this week, what are you most looking forward to? Draft starts Thursday, so we're cheating a little bit because the question on the television screen anyway says most excited for Saturday. By Saturday, the draft's entered into its third and beyond rounds of the draft. But still, the draft continues. NBA playoffs continue, in some cases after a bit of a hiatus. You have the Derby, you have the fight. Playoffs continue in the NHL, obviously, as well. So you've got all kinds of playoffs. You've got Run for the Roses. You've got this fight that we've waited for forever. You've got a compelling draft. Todd McShay with us a little bit later as well. Your answer to that question is what?
The fight.
Because?
Come on, we've been waiting for this forever. Even though it's easily 5 years past the peak year you would want it, the draft, it's going to happen. You know what I mean? The NBA playoffs, potential Game 7. I get it. The Derby, I love to sit and find a spot to go watch. I can't name one horse. It's Tuesday. Okay, so
Dortmund. Big giant horse. I just asked Falika. Tell me something about this Derby that's compelling. He said there's actually a lot of things, but he's a horse guy.
Well, of course he's going to tell you it's compelling. This is what he does.
Exactly.
But the fight, if you wake up on Sunday not knowing the outcome of all the things, who won in the NBA playoffs, who won the Derby, how is there any question that you ask before who won the fight?
Stanford Steve?
I'm a Kentucky Derby guy every year. Just, I was growing up always into it, so that's my answer. I know Ryan doesn't like it, but
no, that's not true. I love it, but the idea that I care enough that I'd want to watch that. If I could only watch one thing, the Derby or the fight, you'd watch the Derby.
Yeah, well, the Derby is a day. It's not just the 90 seconds or 2 minutes, but there's a process that my friends and I go through.
Tell us about that process, Steve.
On Derby Day. It starts pretty early and it ends pretty late. And it'll probably end with watching the fight. But, there's a group of guys that all get together, head to an OTB, maybe check out some odds on some races. There's 13 races the day of the Derby at Churchill Downs. So, you're locked in probably every race.
Here's why your answer, I understand it, but I'm not telling you it's the wrong answer because you can't your opinion can't be wrong here. But you're event specific here. You'd be looking forward to this if it was Dortmund, this gigantic horse, and all of the Baffert storylines that the horse racing people know about. It's entirely dependent, or it's entirely event specific. This Saturday in May means something to you and your friends. It has nothing to do with this specific Saturday.
True.
Well, to Ryan's point, which I agree with, this isn't just a fight. It's a fight involving a very polarizing figure in Floyd, and a fight that is here's my one concern about why, and that's my answer as well, is this fight, because I'm curious to see. My fear is that Pacquiao, who's a singer and a basketball player and a politician and a demigod in his country, is beyond the peak of being even capable of being a threat to Floyd. And so,
you don't think he's a threat?
I don't know. I don't know if he is. I don't know if he. I mean, there was a time. I mean, when he hit Hatton with that left, man, he seemed like a threat to me. But this is how many years since that happened, and once you see a guy crumpled on the ground the way he was, I don't know if this isn't just a giant money grab from a dude that thought, man, I could have probably gotten 25% more at some stage, but I'm still going to get me a pile of cash.
A money grab for Pacquiao?
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. We see this entirely differently. Like, I know he's lost some fights. One was a terrible decision. One was a great punch. I'm with you that it's past his prime, but to think he has no shot in this thing, I just don't think you can hit Floyd. I think when Floyd is right, he's impossible. His defense, his movement is so good. But I think you're being a little dismissive of Pacquiao.
And I want to clarify then, because I'm not saying he's not a threat. My curiosity and my concern is it at this late stage, you missed your best window, but you're still going to get the cash. You're not leaving all that money on the table. And if you had to acquiesce,
that's why the fight was always happening. No matter what, it was always happening eventually because it was going to work financially.
Right. So
next one.
I'm not. It's not like Mayweather's not motivated by money. We all know that, but he was always going to get this on his terms, and he does. All that tonnage of words said, the fight still feels like the answer because you're right. Sunday morning, if you hadn't seen it when you wake up, is it hey, who'd
the Clippers win?
Yeah, who'd the Colts get in the fourth round, or who won the fight last night?
That's why I've always loved big fights because, and it's not the same today. I get when people talk about boxing being dead. Well, look at the pay-per-views. It's not dead. You have to understand that sometimes the things that you like are the things you grew up liking that are different now. There are other people. Look at the population charts and how this country works, and there are a lot of people out there that cannot wait for every single fight. There are a lot of people out there in the world that love MMA, and if you hate it, it doesn't mean it's irrelevant. If you don't watch baseball as much anymore, it doesn't mean the rest of the world hates baseball. And it's weird how if something isn't the NFL, then it's just a losing proposition, and that's not the case. But with this one, there's so many people rooting against Floyd, and you call him a polarizing figure. I don't even is he actually polarizing?
I think there are people that like the guy.
Really?
Sure.
They like him, the fighter, but I don't know how there's any connection with the guy.
People always root for the guy who's got the perfect record.
You do know anyone that says they like him, though? Like, I can understand, hey, he's my favorite fighter, the guy's awesome, and he is a thrill to watch, especially when he had this thing rolling. But I don't hear anybody go.
I think, to Scott's point, I think I see where he's coming from, and just the idea of people love getting into watching Floyd fight, rooting for him. There's plenty of people that are going to bet him because he is undefeated in that lore, so they do like him in that sense.
I think there's a longer line of people that'll root for Manny just because of the story, and then there's a bunch of the gambling line's longer just because you get a gigantic comeback, on the investment if you take a swing. It's interesting. I mean, we're going to try to dominate this news story, so we're going to send a zillion people out there, and then last time at Sports Center, he's showing them a bus, apparently. Hey, there's a dude here on a bus. Awesome.
It is crazy, though.
Monday night.
The way we do this show and all the stuff that you do and stuff on SportsCenter, to think that the NFL draft is, okay, let's get some draft in there, too. Like, that doesn't ever happen. And that's this fight. And that's what like I said, when you think about fighting in the 1900s, the world stopped for these events.
You're right.
It was generally always heavyweight fights, but the world stopped. Every single person in the street had an opinion. Guys got on rail cars and headed on out. They found a way. Let me get to the fight. And this isn't the greatest fight ever. I mean, that stuff's ridiculous, and I know they're just going to say that, and I could name a bunch that are just bigger. But when you think about the magnitude of what this means and two guys getting into a ring and everybody, like, it's pretty simple. Who do you have? That's kind of what this country started on with the way sports recovered.
It's the right answer for both of us. What's your answer? 1-800-Flowers.com, Twitter feed at SVP and Russillo. And Twitter's the best thing because it forces you to make your point quickly with an efficiency of use of characters.
So there's no misunderstanding. So
draft.
When somebody says baseball, you go, okay, good use of Twitter.
There you go. Draft, the
series.
Playoffs, the Derby. You're like Stanford Steve and get your hat on and spend all day in each other's company.
SVP and Russillo.
As it relates to the NBA playoffs and last night, the Hawks now find themselves maybe in a series, and the Bulls find themselves maybe in a series, do you believe either of those teams, Chicago or Atlanta, is in danger?
Of not getting out? Atlanta, I mean, just based on the numbers of where we're at series-wise, that it's split. And Darren Williams, I don't know who that guy was last night because he was incredible. 35 points and hits that massive three from almost 30 feet out. And you could just see, it's amazing with basketball players how when the shots start going down, you move differently. You move with this confidence, this freedom. A guy that's battled all these injuries. He even said he had some knee tendonitis before the game got going that he had to fight through, and he was terrific. So that's one of those deals you go, well, are we going to see this again? Because that changes everything.
It was fun to be reminded of what Darren Williams' ceiling looks like when he's approaching it. I mean, there was a period of time, and it wasn't 100 years ago, where it was him versus Paul, and because he had such a physical advantage over Paul in terms of strength, that a lot of people would tell you Williams is one of the best, and he got paid that way, and he's been off the grid for a while. He was great last night, but I thought the Hawks were going to win the game, and I think the Hawks will win the series. I feel like the team that I slept on even worse is the Bucks.
No, you didn't, because they don't have any closing scoring, yet they got it last night from Michael Carter-Williams, who was basically a triple-double. And he owned Derrick Rose. And their defense has been good. And there's a way that they go about it where, it's funny, we were kind of laughing about it yesterday, where it's, these guys are too dumb to know any better. Well, they do actually play that way. Like Adetokounmpo, who wasn't great last night, still is playing like he thinks he's right there with everybody else. And O.J. Mayo, who's, I know everybody laughs at him, but, he's not a terrible player, and Henson has come along. But I just don't see how there's enough offense here where we start going, they're going to blow a 3-0 lead.
I am completely with you. But I agreed with Charles last night on TNT with this assessment, and maybe this was just the worst part of human nature. You're at home, you're Chicago, you think you're better, and so you think you can coast. Here's Charles.
I still like the Bulls, but the Bulls got to play with a sense of urgency. Tonight they were so lackadaisical. And this book, the one thing I can say about this book is they play extremely hard with great energy.
And with great defense.
Yeah, but great energy. Energy is one of the more underrated talents in the NBA.
And it's a little bit of the youth. It's a little bit of the, hey, this is the first time on this stage, this and that. And maybe I phrase it wrong in saying I've slept on the Bucks. Maybe I'll say it different.
What did you do wrong about the Bucks?
Nothing. I was way too quick to just pencil in the Bulls based on I got all excited.
I'm still penciling them in.
I got all excited because Rose looked great. Rose versus Kyrie next round. How you feeling?
Right. I said it before the show.
Yes, you did. That's why I'm asking
There's no way you feel good about that. And I know Michael Carter-Williams has this length to finish over Rose. And Rose, missed all of his threes, but we've gotten excited about seeing him attack more. But, that's just what we do. I mean, we went from 2 days ago going, hey, Chicago can beat Cleveland, to now what's going on with them. But they had a million turnovers in Game 4, and they lose on a last-second shot where Rose made a huge mistake on the inbound play to Jared Bayless. And last night it wasn't about turnovers. I don't know if it was just about energy, but Carter-Williams owned them late.
I just thought Charles was right, that the building felt flat.
It was.
The good news for the Bulls is that they'll go have a home game up in Milwaukee because there'll be a ton of red in that building, and they know now they can't just coast. As for that next series, presuming Chicago moves forward and takes on Cleveland, the Cavs said yesterday that they thought they'd be without Love for that series, but now David Griffin, their GM, with this news update today on Love.
I think our press release yesterday caused a little bit of a stir that maybe he would be back following a next series should we advance beyond that. I want to make it really clear that's highly unlikely. The damage to his shoulder is extensive. This is not a situation where we're expecting he will be available for any of this.
It's a gigantic development.
It is, because I thought yesterday when the 2-week thing came out, it was just everybody leave us alone, stop asking 2 weeks. But that was in every circle you talk to guys are going, that's best case scenario, which means it's probably not going to happen. And now you go, well, they can still beat Chicago. I think they can still beat Chicago or Milwaukee. If the Nets come back and take out Atlanta, I mean, Atlanta is going to – remember how we kind of felt like the Spurs had held against them when they lost to Memphis the 1-8?
Yep.
If Atlanta blows this 2-0 lead to the Brooklyn Nets and loses in a 1-8, they could go 82-0 in a regular season, and no one's going to pick them to do anything.
They won. How many games did they win this year? Like 90?
65, was it?
I mean, they had the most wins in the East, and we just fell all over ourselves inventing reasons
60,
to ignore them. And I don't think they're going to lose. Corver had a number of looks that are halfway down and come out. I just think last night was a simple case of a truly great performance from a guy who once was great. And I think you hit on something there. When you see the ball go in and it becomes self-fulfilling. You believe it will continue to happen. And he was fantastic.
And everybody's favorite grown-up, Lionel Hollins, afterwards just let everybody know, back off my guy. I understand he's sticking up for his guy, but there's always this thing when someone who's criticized a lot, you go, well, why is he being criticized a lot? It's because Deron Williams hasn't been very good for a while, and he was awesome last night. But it doesn't mean that everybody that said, man, what do you have when you have Deron Williams anymore? They were trying to trade him this year.
He had 2 in a Game 2 loss in Atlanta.
Right.
2 points.
Hollins said before the series, they asked him, what do you like about this series? He said nothing.
Yeah, but then it's our fault, those of us that have been critical of Deron Williams. I mean, Lionel Hollins is in his own world. He just truly is. Deron Williams, prior to that 3 that he hit last night, which was a monster shot. I mean, no one's taking that away from him. But last night does not erase 2+ years of disappointment. With the Nets, in 5 minutes to go in playoff games, where the score is up, either 5 up, 5 down, right? So those close and late scenarios.
Yep.
So again, last 5 minutes of a game, up 5, down 5. Deron Williams was 2 of 17 with the Nets in playoff games in those spots. So I've never quite understood you're wrong about our guy. You go,
are we?
No one's telling him or telling you that this wasn't terrific, but there's a reason why. And yeah, it must be tough for him because you're right. When it was good, he was right there with everybody else.
Team USA.
But that's been a long time. And that's why there's so much frustration, not from just the media, but frustration with Nets fans.
But just to bring this thing full circle, of those 2, you're well established on the record that Milwaukee doesn't score enough for you to feel like they're a threat. The Nets just would be more afraid of just because of their capacity to score.
Yeah.
But we both feel all right about Atlanta and Chicago moving forward.
Yeah, I still do.
As do I.
SVP and Russillo.
No, for real.
Do you share the sense I have that anything might happen on Thursday night?
The more people you read, the more people it doesn't seem like they have much of a clue on. I don't want to say clue because it makes it sound like you're criticizing these guys. And I think these draft guys don't get enough credit, actually, for the work they do. Everybody just loves to crush them all the time. But if you look around, and we've even had insiders poll people that work for teams and go, give me your top 5 guys in any order, and everybody seems to have it differently. There's very little consensus this year as opposed to other years.
Quarterback is always and will always be the most compelling position, and given the fact that there are a number of rumors out there, let's start with the very complicated. Would Philadelphia have enough pieces to pull off a move to get to 2 to get Chip Kelly, his former quarterback from Oregon, and Marcus Mariota? You believe it? Do you think it's a possibility?
Do I think that he's starting the day going, how do I get up to 2 to get Mariota? I think the thing's been, and it's just an opinion, but I feel like it's been overblown. I don't know how they do it. I guess anything's possible if you want to start dumping a ton of picks. And I think Chip, in a way, probably kind of enjoys the idea that he thinks everybody's going, oh, he's trying to find a way. He's got 20.
Drop the probably, and you're right. You know he does.
Right. So then the other rumor that's been going around is that he traded for Bradford, knowing that he can flip Bradford to the Browns, so he'd have 19 and 20. But you'd still have to add something in there to get all the way up to number 2. So would you do that in next year's first rounder? Would you do that? Those 2 picks, moving Bradford, and then bringing in Mariota and maybe having to move one of your players when they still have some depth issues on defense? It just seems to be such a massive price. But then again, if Chip goes, this is the guy that understands my system better than anybody else that's even playing in the league, I can go ahead and grab it. It's been talked about for too long, and when that happens, it feels like it isn't going to happen.
Mariota is truly a fascinating prospect because I wonder if he's the ultimate guy that teams are going to talk themselves into because they can't talk themselves out of it by processes of elimination. And what happens with the team making that pick? Is it Tennessee? And Mort's thoughts on Mariota being a pivot point, a wild card, right there at 2.
I expect it to be Winston. I will not be shocked if it's Mariota. I will be mildly surprised if it's Mariota. And with the Tennessee Titans in number 2, I think it's all about them trading a pick if they can get somebody to move up there. And I think that's the problematic area. I think there are teams that have an interest in Mariota at a fairly high level, but to pay the price is significant.
So that's a question. Would you pay the price to move, and the one team that's most closely linked with the idea of trading, and it would be ready-made, would Tennessee reunite Wiz and Hunt with Rivers, move Phillip Rivers from San Diego, and then San Diego take Mariota?
No, I just don't think San Diego is going to say, we're so worried about the Phillip Rivers thing moving forward, we'll move off one of the best quarterbacks in the league today, who still likely has 5 really good years left. 30, 32, 33, you get to 37, 38. You should be able to do that with Rivers. So all the contract stuff, and we might move and all these things, the more I think about the 2 biggest rumors leading up to Thursday's draft, the more I just don't think either one are going to happen.
I buy more the idea of Rivers turns 34 at the end of this year. So,
all right,
still,
so he's 34.
Regardless, no, I mean, you're right in the ballpark. I'm trying to remember, and I'm just trying to do the math in my own brain. You get a more ready-made situation in Rivers. I mean, he's
it's not even close. You know how good he is.
Without a doubt. Obviously, the finish line is much closer. And you don't know for certain what you get with Mariota. Of the 2, it's just far easier to – it's just less moving pieces. I don't know. Chip can be a clever guy, and he can have fun with the process. I just don't know what pieces you put together that make it work. I don't know how the math works. 19 and 20 and no. For 2, I don't know.
19 and 20, and then you go 2016, number 1. Now, do you really want to do that?
You'd better be right, man. I mean, we keep saying you'd better be right, but nothing he's done yet. You let Shady go, and you bring in DeMarco, Mary, present. That's not rolling the dice like 2 firsts and another one to bring in this guy. The Rivers one is just an easier swap, but I understand San Diego is the only team that knows for sure just what kind of pushback there'd be if they move. What does Rivers want to do? Yada, yada. I don't know. How bad could it be to trade San Diego for Los Angeles? How bad would it really be? Why would he say, I don't want to do that? But of the 2, that seems far more plausible to me. And in your mind, it's not even plausible.
No, I actually, if I'm forced to pick of the 2 rumors, which one would be more likely to happen, I would think it'd be the Eagles because – whatever you want to say about Rivers' age and being closer to the finish line, you at least know what it's been up until then. And even if you're a team that loves Marcus Mariota, think how many guys have actually drafted quarterbacks where they think to themselves, we know we have the guy here. Is it less than 10%?
Less than 10%?
Of when you draft the player, you draft the quarterback and you go, yep, nailed it. I'm not talking about it being a 50 coin toss. I bet you there are plenty of teams that have drafted a guy at that position saying, wow, that really worked out. I mean, what great luck for us.
Is there anything societally that we do that we put this much effort forth that we're this bad at than scouting quarterbacks? It's a staggering swing and miss percentage.
Never read any stock market advice?
Not a lot. You're the guy that gets the Economist, not me.
Why are they good?
No, I just always think it's funny when somebody's like, talk more Milwaukee. And you're like, how's your 401k doing? You know? Like, sorry I didn't talk enough bucks. You listen to a guy on a TV show that told you to buy all this stuff, and that cost you money.
I just think it's amazing how, for all the scrutiny and all the tire kicking that goes on, it feels like the guys who go 1-2 this year might be teams just shrugging and going, man, I hope.
Exactly. I mean, that's why Andrew Luck is so special, because everybody's going, I get it, I see it, this makes sense, oh, wow, he's that guy already.
You buy either rumor, Stanford Steve?
I'm starting to lean towards the Rivers one. I think I don't know, I think there's a perception of him out there, and I don't know what he just seems like one of those guys you don't know what's around, like to be around him every day, and if it's as, different as everyone says it's going to be for that franchise, I think they might be, wanting to go in a long-term effect with Mariota.
I can't remember a draft. I mean, again, we asked at the top of the show, what are you most looking forward to? I'm fascinated by this draft because I have zero sense of what's going to happen.
SVP and Russillo.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
It's time for Scott Van Pelt's One Big Thing. One Big Thing. On ESPN Radio and ESPNRadio.com.
I sit next to a smart guy every day on this show, and among the things that Ryan has not taught me is not the right word, but definitely opened my eyes to is the thought that when draft prospects come through here, I'm almost always struck by that's a good guy. That's a good guy, an impressive young man. In this year's class, we felt that way about. But as Ryan has often said, and he's right, you've got to work pretty hard to screw up that 5 to 8 minute window when our lives and our paths intersect. Guys have, but very few do. In the case of Shane Ray from Missouri, when he sat down here, I think he sat down with sympathetic interviewers in the sense that Ryan and I had both talked that morning about the piece that Rinaldi did about his life. And this is a young man that escaped the clutches of a neighborhood that doesn't often let guys make it. I felt personally very badly for him because I was incredibly lucky to have a father who was very interested in my life as an athlete, and I was a decent athlete. I was pretty good, but my dad, in some ways, it almost, when I was younger, felt like a burden how interested he was, and I'm thankful that, before I lost my pop, I realized how lucky I was to have him. And then I compare that to a young man like Ray that all he wanted was to have his dad be involved in his life. And so you root for a kid like that. And then, he's got this foot issue, and now there's some concerns, and we asked him, where do you think you see yourself going? And he said, I'm here in between like 3 and 8. And when we asked him about any issues, any red flags, just to talking about, like, what do you try to sell teams on? Who are you? What do you have to be better at? He said this.
It's such an amazing opportunity, and, of course, having money like that go into your account, it opens a lot of doors for you to be able to help people and do certain things. And it feels good, but for me, it really never was just about I want to go to the league so I can be rich and have everything I wanted. When I really got into football, I really dedicated myself because I want to be the best. I want people to say he's one of the best defensive players to play the game, and so that internally just drives me every day, whatever I'm doing, trying to be better.
Well, he got stopped Monday morning speeding in Missouri. By now you probably know 35 grams of marijuana. If you've listened to the show over the years, you know my stance on marijuana. I'm pro. I'm not saying that you should smoke it every day, but if you do, it doesn't bother me. It's thing grows in the world. It grows, You got to work harder to create alcohol than you do to create marijuana. That's a whole other topic as well. I'm not anti. But in this case, the week of the draft, you get pulled over with this 35 grams of marijuana, you got this foot situation, and now Ryan, this guy that we can root for the guy, but he's making it harder and harder on himself to realize this dream, and you just wonder, you start reading the projections, and there's thoughts he might make it to the 3rd day of the draft.
That I have a hard time believing.
So do I.
I still think he can go in the first round, and a team will, and there's certain teams, there's a lot of teams that are out there that go, we'll take the troubled guy because we thought he'd be a top 10 pick. We had him 5 on our overall board, and we're sitting here in the late teens and the 20s, and it's a position of need. So it seems impossibly stupid to have this happen to you so close to the most important night of your professional life, but I just don't believe these doomsday things where he's going to be there day 3. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I don't see it.
And we'll ask, if you missed it, we talked to Todd McShay earlier, and you compare him to Nebraska's Randy Gregory, and the benefit Gregory now has is that his marijuana situation is now not as recent. And, he admitted to folks at the Combine that when he was at Nebraska, he was smoking constantly. and you're thinking, you're going to get drug tested at the combine, and you can't stop long enough to at least pass that test, so that creates a red flag. But then if you're thinking we want a rusher, well, maybe we pass on Ray now because this is the Monday of the draft. And again, you meet a young man that you want to root for because of the circumstances, and he's escaped some, but not all. And then this is just awful decision making. And I've tried to wrap my head around, like, how does it happen? You come here, you're excited, you go back to see you're hanging out with your boys. This is early in the morning, man. What are you doing? But this entire, not the whole draft, the absolute cream of this draft, the very top of this draft, as McShay told us earlier, 6 of the top 10 picks he feels like there are red flag / character concerns on. So teams are going to have to talk themselves into it or out of it with some of the best, not third and fourth rounders, first through 10 picks.
Because we don't have a gauge on this, and it seems like all the projections are all over the place, which can, again, make Thursday really fun. I wonder if that means smarter teams that have built up plenty of stability in their fan base, just go, let's get out of this thing. Let's trade out of the top 10. Let's trade out of the bottom half of the first round. Let's keep stockpiling those picks, because I always feel like the worst teams are the teams that go, we have to draft somebody exciting because everybody hates us and they all want us fired. Once you start going down that hole, then you're done. You might as well, I forget, what movie is it where the guy writes the letter?
Ghost Dad.
Yes. Well done. And then he goes, now write a second letter,
Ghost Dad too.
That's right. Not greenlit. But that's, I look at the end of the first round. If McShay thinks that there's 16 players of the first round grade, and that means 16 other guys are going to go in there, and that no one in the back end of the second round is that much different than the guys in the back end of the first round, the smart teams are going to go, we don't care about our draft party and your wings and your hat and, all you guys fired up. Bad organizations are the ones that go, let's take a wide receiver because everybody likes fantasy.
Oakland at 4. Which one are they taking? Are they taking Cooper or White? Which one? Ray afterwards said everything right, and he said everything right when he was sitting here. And guys that are capable, guys that are smart enough to know exactly what to say, and Ray seems like that. I just wonder why late night / early morning, the week of the draft, you just didn't have the better answer then. You didn't have the right thought, the right frame of mind then. And you combine a bunch of different rushers and a red flag now about your foot, and then this, and I think he'll fall. I could see him lasting until Friday, but I can't see him lasting until Saturday. That means he'd last till the 4th round. I mean, that type of free fall, that seems, put it this way, I'm not rooting for that. I'm rooting for the young man. He just made it harder on himself this week.
SVP and Russillo.
Mayo's the best condiment.
Thought of this last night, trying to figure out ways to talk draft. Who likes questions more than we do at ESPN Radio? But this is not cheesy. And we've done cheesy before. I'm going to throw 5 questions at you, draft-related. Do we have music? There you go. What's up? Are you ready?
Yeah, I like talking about the draft.
Okay, so we have a voice guy who did all of that, and then I'll back up any explanation that we need, okay?
Yep.
These are good. Well thought out. Up late last night. Memphis, Portland. What's up?
What a wild fourth quarter, by the way. Sorry.
Wild. Well said.
Hut.
Who could this year's Kawhi Leonard be?
Here's the point of this question. NBA guy Kawhi Leonard, he goes to the Spurs, and you think, wait a minute, that's probably going to work out. Because you weren't sure about him in college. Is he undersized? Is he 4? Can he shoot? All these different things. And now he's nasty. So a player that you're not sure about in the NFL draft, that if he is drafted by a certain organization, that you are then sold on that player.
So, like, if Eddie Goldman just ends up the defensive tackle out of Florida State, if he just ends up getting drafted and thrown in the middle of, say, Pittsburgh or Baltimore, I'm just going to assume he's going to work out because he's there.
Right.
Is that the right way to play the game?
Yeah, I mean, there's another way, too, of doing it where if, say, another organization takes a guy, you go, okay, that's not going to work out. So I went ahead with Eric Armstead from Oregon because when I watch him play, physically, I get it. He is imposing. That airplane team type of guy. But if he went to a team that I didn't really respect their front office, I think, well, maybe he's just a hit-or-miss physical guy. But if he ends up with the San Francisco 49ers, then I'm going to assume that Eric Armstead is going to work out and have a productive career because I just believe in that front office that much.
I gotcha. I like that. Let me circle back on that.
Okay.
That's in depth.
Okay. Question number 2.
Hut.
What would be the biggest surprise?
Give me something within reason that would be a huge surprise to you if it ends up happening, say, in the first round.
Well, I'd be shocked if Philadelphia did this trade. If they actually get to 2, in spite of the fact that this has been talked about, and that people think that Chip's stockpiling and he's got some final trick up his sleeve, that last ace like it's Gunsmoke, and he's going to pull it out and drop it down and go, give me that number 2 pick. I don't think that's happening. So I don't buy that. And it would shock me if Winston didn't go number 1. So both those things would really shock me.
Todd Gurley, for as much as I loved him in college, coming off that ACL, and even Mort being in here last week saying there are, what was it, Steve, 2-3 teams he said that had Gurley as their top overall rated player in this draft, I'd still be surprised to see him go in the top 10. Draft questions, SVP and Russillo on ESPN Radio.
Hut.
Which general manager cannot have a bad draft?
Well, if you're Caldwell with the Jags and you've got the number 3 pick again, and you've got all these analytics and you're figuring out all these cool ways to crunch numbers, and you took Bortles last year and you've got a number 3 pick again, you better start getting people that can win, or else you're going to just stink forever, win less than 8 games and constantly draft in the top 10, and you won't be the guy doing the drafting if you continue to draft there. So I think it's an important draft for him. I feel like for Loomis and the Saints, your defense stinks. You've got 2 first-round picks. Your quarterback's 36 years old. I don't know, both of those, one from each league. I think you better be good.
I don't think Loomis is going to lose his job over it, though. That's different. I understand what you're saying about Jacksonville, but he hasn't been there long enough.
Year 3, I understand. You got one that you feel like somebody's going to you better do this for your job type scenario.
Yeah, this is his 4th draft in Tennessee, and if you look at the Titans' talent on that roster, it's not that great, and that's Rustin Webster, who some of the football guys on our end of things were actually laughing at his bio and the things that it was bragging about, like Delanie Walker. Yes. So if you go through it, and actually Paul Kaharski, who covers the Titans, he's covering forever, and is now on ESPN.com, he went through all the players that Webster's brought in, okay? Like, these are the names that he put at the top tier group, whether it's draft or free agency. Walker, Kendall Wright was a first-round pick. Chance Warmack, the guard, is starting to come around from Bama. Taylor Lewan, the first-round pick from Michigan, which was last year.
They bought a pig in college.
Avery Williamson, Bernard Pollard, Ryan Suckup, the kicker. I mean, these are the players that are in your top tier of the talent that you've brought in since you've been there, and this is draft number 4.
Number 4. So that's one more year than Jacksonville. I mean, they're both in the same kind of neighborhood where you better get impact. And the reason I chose Jacksonville is because they chose a quarterback. And you better be right with that guy. You know what I mean? So, I mean, yours makes sense, obviously.
Scott, what about the Redskins GM? What's his name?
McLuhan?
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
I thought you might say him.
Couple more.
That's an interesting one. I jotted it down. I mean, it's just, hey, you finally got a guy whose name is respected so much that his name sometimes is mispronounced. What do you got?
Hut.
What do you think is the biggest need for one team?
Here's what you can do. You can go with a team. You can go need. You can give them a player, but you can't bend the rules so much that you sit there and look at, say, the Colts and go, let's just give them Amari Cooper at 29, because that's not going to happen.
I wrote down a bunch of needs for teams. Can I just rapid fire you here?
No.
Just one?
I want one guy to one team within reason.
Gordon to Arizona. They need a guy. I mean, Ellington's cool, but you need a between the tackles running back to kind of round that team out. And I've got 6 different teams listed, but
you're right. I mean,
that one. I'll try to be realistic with that one guy there. That's the biggest need. I mean, look, Cleveland needs a wide receiver so badly. But now I just cheated and did 2. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Look, I didn't know if you were going to explain them all and then not pick one.
No.
24 for Arizona, Melvin Gordon.
He'll be there.
Without question, in play in that range. I thought about a tackle for the Panthers. I thought about a running back for the Chargers. But the Patriots,
defensive back?
I don't know how you don't take one here. And unfortunately for Belichick, that's one of the few things he's done wrong. He just hasn't drafted well with corners, and they lose Revis and they lose Browner, which means about 20 less penalties at least next year. But I would go with Marcus Peters out of Washington, and that's another one of those kind of Kawhi Leonard Spurs-type picks where I go, if Peters, the troubled guy, goes to New England, I feel like he just has a better chance to succeed. And I actually think he's that good of a player. If he doesn't have all the baggage, we're looking at him as a top 10 guy, not going at the back end of the first, and some people even in the second round.
It's funny you just said him because I said let's circle back. If New England takes him, Marcus Peters got kicked off his team at Washington. If he goes to Pittsburgh, if he goes those two teams, if he went to either of those places, I would just go, oh, okay. Maybe even Baltimore. But those types of organizations, if he went there, I think, oh, he'll be all right. Whereas if he ended up someplace else, I'd say, I don't know about that cat.
Right. It totally makes sense. All right, final one for the big guy.
Hut.
Who's Stanford Steve's second rounder that he thinks should go in the first round that isn't a Cardinal?
I thought I knew who it was. I thought I was the big boy, but he's from Stanford, so.
Ronald Darby.
No.
DB, Florida State.
Who is it?
Denzel Perriman, linebacker, Miami.
Okay.
Love him.
That's your
Your team should be really happy if you get him, wherever you get him.
If we had allowed Stanford players to be eligible for this.
Henry Anderson, defensive tackle.
You know, one of the analytics places had him as a lock, like middle of the first rounder, because of the constant pressure he gets by the way they look at it.
What round's your guy Ty going to go?
Ooh, I don't know.
Webb?
No. Ty Hilton.
You got a lot of guys I think that could contribute to teams.
Remember that? Ty Montgomery, the wide receiver, playmaker, little guy, but he can play in the league.
He's not that small. He'll be around the same time as your guy from Maryland, Diggs.
Stephon Diggs?
Yeah, both return guys.
We were going to do Who Did You Forget was in the draft, and T.J. Yeldon never, ever gets talked about from Alabama.
God, that's a great one. That's a great one.
Think about that dude, and when we were watching him on the sideline against
First
Michigan,
game.
we're like, who is this guy? And then, it's the fumbles, dinged up a little bit, and then Derrick Henry ends up looking like the better running back, but Yeldon, I was looking at I got deep into it last night. It's kind of thought, it's just assumed he'll be a third rounder. You go, whoa.
Yeah,
is that wrong?
He might be a third-day guy. Alabama just keeps getting guys who are creatures that are running backs, and he was a little more finesse. He put on the ground too much. I mean, and everybody who's behind him is
he too upright? I don't get that he doesn't get a little bit more. I forgot he was in the draft. I'll be completely honest with you. There were a few weeks went by, and I remember at the end of the year, fine, but then, and this has been a few months, and you go, that's right, because no one talks about him.
Mine was Jake Fisher.
Yeah, he's the most important player in college football last year.
Yeah, paid attention.
The tackle from Oregon when they lost to Arizona, and then they got him back, and then it was like, well, they didn't have Jake Fisher, so.
I'll give you Mario Edwards, the defender out of Florida State. That they had so many different guys, and everyone's talking about Goldman instead of. They'll have 7 pros this year, at minimum.
SVP and Russillo. ESPN Radio, bringing you directly to the biggest events in sports.
Center field, well hit, Hunter back, out of here!
From opening day of baseball,
Throw to the plate, safe at the plate!
right through the World Series.
For the third time in 5 seasons, the San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
Whether it's LeBron, Chris Paul, or Kevin Durant, when the NBA tips off, ESPN Radio is right there when a champion is crowned.
We have a new world champion. The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
And when the magic of bowl season arrives, ESPN Radio is your home for the new college football playoff.
The college football playoff first national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
The biggest events in sports can be found right here on ESPN Radio. SVP and Russillo.
What was your proposal about the ability to speak to a referee during a game? I love this.
Yeah, I went through it, and I know it's really easy to make fun of officials the whole time, and I think it's a tough job. I mean, are there 30, 40 other guys qualified to do it that just don't get to do it, and the NBA has the bad ones? So I thought for all the interaction, and this is part of my book, How Jordan Ruined the NBA, where
when's that coming up?
still in. I can't get anybody to write the prologue.
I'll write it. Here's a book. Here's a book by my man. Check it out.
Now you would try to be more verbose than that.
I just would try to be super articulate and use some SAT words for sure.
Yeah. What did you do for Brankis's? Didn't you do a book review for that for Sports Science Guy? Didn't you say something profound?
Probably.
In a sea of sameness.
The fact that you know that I said that is amazing.
Because I was like, wait a minute, Van Pelt did a back cover for it.
I felt like I needed to make it impactful. I wanted people to remember it, and it worked. You did.
Right, yeah. It said something like, in a sea of sameness, this is a volleyball on your raft to freedom.
That part didn't happen. I'll say this is a book by Ryen Russillo, and it's as good as bacon. Because bacon's awesome.
If I could read this book or eat bacon, I'd eat bacon, but this would be a good way to mop up the grease.
Okay.
So, all right. So I proposed a rule. Because Jordan talked to the officials every time. So you've grown up with generations of players that watch Jordan talk to the refs. So they're like, well, I have to do the same thing. And you're like, no, you're J.J. Barea, okay? So here's a rule. New rule, right? Bill Maher stuff?
Bill Maher, yeah.
If you don't score 10 a game, you can't talk to the officials the entire game.
Dunn and Dunsky.
One of your 12 officials on the staff, one of your 12 assistants on the staff, you go, hey, J.R. Smith, you're at 9.8. Can't talk to the officials tonight. Now, granted, he would start jacking them up to get over 10 for the next game, but you see the point.
Yes, I do.
If you're scoring 6.5 a game, if you're Alexi Ajinça, you don't get to talk to the official.
And
let's get this thing moving.
And it's a plague on humanity that it's just never ending.
It never ends. The league tried to, and I think it was just under 10 years ago, the league tried to pass a thing where they're going to give everybody technicals that wanted to sit there and have a State of the Union address after every single possession. And they teed up everybody the first 3 weeks, and the league or the players screamed and says it wasn't collectively bargained, and on and on and on. They just gave up. All right, so here's the proposal, a new one. Give me your starting 5 current players for the All-NBA Complain team. That's what we did last night.
I have 2 that are not that there's no debate on. There can be no debate about these 2. Chris Paul.
No debate for me on that one, man. It is bad.
Love him.
Love him. I'll take it all, but it doesn't mean I have to like it all.
I mean, it never stops. Now, to be fair to him, he squabbles with his own guys and he gets mad and just acts out crazy. And then
if Scarlett Johansson was a horrible tipper, I go,
yeah,
all right, I guess I'll handle this, Mrs. 7%, but I can put up with the rest of it.
Tim Duncan has spent 19 years with perpetual Muppet face. Big eyes, hands out, Muppet face. 19 years. Love his game. He complains more just with that big giant eyes and wait, what happened? Do we agree on both of those?
Yeah, so I'm with you on CP3. I'm putting Duncan at center, but I probably, because he is a center, but I should probably put him at power forward so I can slide another guy in there because I got to go with Powell. Gasol, when John Henson pulled the chair from him last night, he didn't do anything. Gasol just fell down and threw the ball into the rim and it was an act against humanity. He was just so upset. He missed a free throw last night and then stared down the official.
I have not shown a great capacity for positional understanding, but what are we going to do with Dwight Howard?
That's where it got real heated last night because they go, no Dwight. Like, I guess if we hold awards against people for loss of time to injury, loss of games, like I know Powell's out there every night complaining. With Dwight, he's missed some time this year.
Okay, who else? Who else you got?
A lot of people are going, wait a minute, Russillo, you're not going to put Cousins on there? I mean, Cousins is ready to slap a guy who doesn't wipe down the area, and he's not even a ref.
We got a lot of bigs on our squad.
Yeah, we're deep. I
went positions by mine.
No, we did too. We went positions.
So wait, what was your 5 was what?
I went CP3, Dwayne Wade at 2 guard, even with a third of the season in capri pants. Small forward, I left blank because I actually think LeBron has gotten better, which isn't saying much. But in Miami, it was so bad. He might have been the captain of this team, but I think he's dialed it back this year.
I wrote his name down, but I had him 6th man.
Okay, so small forward, I don't know what to do. Power forward, I'm putting Blake. Blake Griffin. Not Steve Blake.
I didn't think you meant the guy from Workaholics.
Just making sure.
And then your big is who? Powell?
I'm going to go Powell because he's there every night.
Harden gets no love?
Over Wade? Wade will complain when the ball is just stripped from him and it was clean, and then he doesn't get back on D. He's like, hey, I'll show you. I'll let them get an easy bucket.
Just felt like his name should be mentioned.
Harden? That's fine. No, I'm not telling you you're wrong.
Hey, listen, when you get 19 free throws a game, you feel like you should get 24, you know? You guys sent me there. You guys sent me there for 10 different times to shoot 2 a night. I was just looking for 12. Stanford Steve, who's your 5?
Well, 3 of the guys are on my most hated list, athlete list. So, well, my point guard is Russell Westbrook.
You think he complains more than
Yes.
CP3?
Yes, I do, especially at the end. Dwayne Wade's shooting guard. Carmelo's a small forward.
You think he complains that much?
Yeah.
I don't even think he's in the same group with those top guys.
I had Powell as my 4 and Boogie as my 5.
But, I can't really complain or argue with that one. I can't complain. See what I did?
I got too many. I have too many bigs. I'm just trying to go with the guys I think complain the most. And I got Wade, Paul, Dwight, Duncan, and Boogie. I have no symmetry here. I mean, no one's playing the right positions. I'm just looking.
If you took Paul off, who's your point guard?
He's the point guard? No one complains more than him.
I know, but who's your second team point guard?
Second team all complain?
I didn't get that deep. I wrote Kobe and LeBron's name down just because they've spent. And part of this is just when you get so many calls, you think you should get every call, and you just don't get every call. Who'd we leave off?
I think you guys are missing Manu for 6th man of the year.
Complaining? He didn't trouble me as much as the others. At SVP and Russillo.
I thought Rio was going to get a mention.
I wanted to put Chalmers in there, but I can't go with a 3-guard lineup.
I went with a bunch of bigs.
It's a 3 by Rio.
I'm getting ready to say something just remarkably stupid.
SVP and Russillo.
Draymond, thanks for taking the time to join us here on SVP and Russillo. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So we live in a world now where we know a lot more about people than we used to know, and I know you had a tummy ache in New Orleans. What kind of bad food did you get a hold of, my man?
You know what? It wasn't bad food. It was really good. It just had my stomach doing numbers that night. But I had some stuffed chicken wings, and then I had some shrimp and grits. It was amazing. Like I eat it again. It was amazing.
So the food was good, but the belly was bad. The good news is you guys now have a rest. You guys have a break. What do you guys use the break to do? Because you guys are playing as well as anybody could play. What are you guys trying to sharpen in the downtime?
Just continue to sharpen our offense up, sharpen up our flow. At the same time, trying to get a little rest mixed in with that, but also make sure our conditioning level is staying up and just make sure we stay in the flow of things. You're going from playing every other day to 8 days off. So that can be challenging, but I think Coach, he's laid out the schedule for us, and it looks phenomenal. I think it'll be just fine for us.
Reading about your story, Draymond, and coming out of high school and getting to Michigan State and having people doubt you all the time, and then the same thing happened in the NBA. So I don't want to ask you, are you better than you thought you'd be, because I think you'd probably just assume you were good. But how would you look at your NBA career so far and how you've really become more notarized more recognized, this season?
I think it's very incredible. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm not surprised. Obviously, I've always believed in myself and my ability. But at the same time, when you just sit back and look at the situation, I'm also realistic. And, I just didn't expect to have this opportunity, especially this early on in my career. So, it's phenomenal. It's definitely a blessing. And, I'm thankful for it and don't take it for granted at all. Like I said, I've always believed in myself. But at the same time, you can believe all you want. If you never really get that opportunity, it really doesn't matter. But I've been, blessed with a tremendous opportunity. Coach Kerr gave me an opportunity, and I just try to take it and run with it.
I want to go back to Game 3, I think it was. I'm pretty good at reading lips. It was after Ryan Anderson swung the elbow. I thought you flopped a little bit, but you got the call. And then he went at you, and I thought he kept saying, hit me, go ahead, hit me right now. Is that what was going on between you two? You can say it now because the series is over.
He definitely hit me with the elbow. he for sure hit me. Obviously, you know, a
You
little bit of
sold it
basketball,
a
you got
little?
to sell it, but he definitely did hit me.
All right, I'll give you that.
I just told him to stop swinging his elbows. I'm going to hit him in his mouth with one elbow. And he still hit me, but obviously, you know, you can't do it there. But, you know, I didn't really get back to it throughout the Florida game. We were down, we needed to make a comeback.
We're talking to Draymond Green of Golden State as they wait for the winner of Memphis and Portland. And I guess what you tweeted out about how Gore won the popular vote but didn't win the presidency, and you didn't win the Player of the Year. Kawhi did. Does it make you a little bit salty given how well you played this year?
I was a little disappointed, you know, especially even seeing the way that the vote rate obviously went. You know, I had more first place votes than anyone, you know, and to still lose, you know, it was kind of frustrating. It was like, oh, you know, you got out second place, you know, and that, so it was a little frustrating. But at the end of the day, you have to give a ton of credit to Kawhi. You know, he is a phenomenal defender, and he's done it at the highest level. You know, one thing I told the media when they interviewed me that day is, you know, I'm disappointed, a little frustrated, but at the same time, I can't be mad or angry because Kawhi is what we all strive to be as players, and that's to be a champion. And he's defended at the highest level phenomenally. And so to get angry, you know, I don't have the right to do that, you know, because he's a champion, he's proven, and, you know, he's done it at the level that I want to be able to do it.
Great answer. That makes a lot of sense. Is it fair to say, Draymond, that Steph Curry does something in practice or games every single day that is ridiculous and blows your mind?
Absolutely.
What's the dumbest?
What's the point now?
What's the dumbest? Well, I'm sorry I keep interrupting you. Just what's the dumbest thing he's done this year? The thing that you're like, I can't believe I saw him do that one thing.
Oh man, it's incredible. That's tough. I probably have to say the shot with Chris Paul, not the one where he made him fall, the one where he dribbled through like three people, ran behind the three-point line and shot a turnaround three. Like he just it was ridiculous. It's like awful shot, pathetic shot. Yeah, you know it go in nothing but net. It's just incredible. And speaking of which, I've been talking junk to him all day in practice, so he come over here clapping to just finish the good super things. But you know it's pretty ridiculous.
Just tell him Ryan said hi. We're pretty close.
Ryan said hi.
He's going to be like, what? How is it different with Steve Kerr after Mark Jackson your first couple years?
You know, it's a little different. It's kind of a different approach. You know, they're similar in some ways, and then, you know, obviously Coach Kerr is a little more fiery than Coach Jackson. He'll get after you a little bit more. Whereas Coach Jackson was more just, you know, just kind of talk to you. Coach Kerr will actually get out there and yell, and he'll do whatever needs to be done. But, you know, at the same time, you know, I think they both, you know, run a good environment and, you know, both try to put you in the best position to win.
Hey, Draymond, we appreciate the time right after practice. Go get that money, go get that ring, and stay with that smile on your face. It's a lot of fun to watch you play. We appreciate it, all right?
Yes, sir. Thanks, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. That's Draymond Green. They used to call him Day-Day back in the day at Michigan State, and I got to tell you, and I've said it a million times, I remember in college thinking, yeah, that guy's he's a good player, but there's just, and it's cool to hear him say, yeah, you can think it, but like this is beyond anything that he thought.
And normally when players get all worked up about who won which award and how the voting went down, he was left off of 42 Defensive Player of the Year ballots. So when you look at it that way, I'm not saying that's the worst thing Kawhi won this thing, but that 42 people that are allowed to vote on this stuff don't put him at the top of their ballot, don't even put him on it in the top three.
We'll chip in and get you league pass.
How many of them are, guys? Bill Wennington left him off? Come on.
SVP and Russillo. Miguel Cabrera leads the Detroit Tigers into Anaheim to face Mike Trout and the Los Angeles Angels. The pregame's at 7 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN2 and on ESPN Radio.